was in 1940, when everybody else had modern plumbing. That's
Well,
how
I was-
frugal
You
they
came up here and she was milking a cow?
Huh?
You said she was milking a cow?
Mm-hmm. And she told Bob to, I have a keen mind, and I don't stretch anything. I know exactly what happened. And she told Bob to go down to Albert. That was Albert Scherer that owned that grocery store. And he had the grocery store for all this area, so he made money. There wasn't any grocery store in this area. And so that little business right there was a grocery store and a gas station. And she told him to go down to Georgia's and get something, or I call it Georgia's now, but Albert's, and get something. And he came in and gave Betty a quarter to go down to feed her. Betty went down and got it. I thought that was funny that he wouldn't go down and do what his mom said, but he gave
Betty a quarter to do it?
To go down and do his errand. But oh, she could, oh my, there's never anyone like her. I never got close to her, never got close to her, because she was Bob's son, buzzer, and Bob was, I never tamed him. I did, and it did tame him, but he's wonderful. The last 40 years we were married. We were owned together, married 54 years, so, but
You said you didn't get that close to her.
I didn't ever get close to her.
Why not?
Bob never ever did anything wrong. You know. And he loved his mother so much that he never come home. He lived up there, but she was good to me. And her husband, the Dad Scherer, saved my life. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for Dad Scherer.
What did he do?
I had I was bleeding from the kidney, and I'd had major surgery here in Portsmouth. Went from, I got a scar from here all the way back in here, and like a snake's tongue up and down.
Oh, where they took out your kidney?
Yeah, they cut me in half and said that I had an old tubercular cavity that was bleeding, and sewed me back up again. And that was in November. And I was in the hospital 6 times after that to April, where I was bleeding really heavily and passing clots that they wouldn't pass. They'd have to take them out with cystoscopy. And Sister Eugenia told me when I was in the hospital the last time to go to Columbus. But we couldn't go to Columbus because in those days we couldn't afford to. And so I was really anemic. Was laying on a couch and trying to take care of my 6 kids. Dad Scherer came through the door and handed Bob $1,000. That was a lot of money at that time. You know, that would be like $5,000 now. And he said, take your wife to Columbus and get her the best doctor in the state. And that was just, well, he was going to pay yet more, but that was to get her to Columbus, me to Columbus. He says, because these children need a mother. And you have to get her well. So Bob took that money and took me to Columbus. And they admitted me, and found out that I had cancer. And so they sent a call from my doctor down here in Portsmouth, Dr. Berman. And it just happened that this doctor here in Columbus that I got, Dr. Winters, that saved my life. They called him down, my doctor here in Portsmouth had started out and trained at, what's that big military hospital out in Massachusetts or someplace? John Hopkins. John Hopkins, he was from John Hopkins Hospital. And for some reason, he ended up getting a job at Ohio State University. And then for some reason, he came down here to Portsmouth. And of course, the reason turned out was because he was on drugs. And he was being dismissed from these. So anyway, he knew him. Dr. Winters knew him because he'd been at the University Hospital in Columbus. He called him up and told him to come up on Monday. He wanted him to know a tumor when he saw you one, because he's the one that had cut me open. And so he came up, and I had a cancer. And the nurse said that Dr. Berman sat down on the step and cried. And so what happened 3 months later, or a little no longer, they ended up taking Dr. Berman's license away from him, and he went to Kentucky to, what is that one over there where Grayson, he died over there. But doctor, you asked me about Dad Scherer, he saved my life. And then it's metastasized, and I was pregnant with Rachel. It went into my bladder. In those days, they didn't have laser surgery or anything. So they had a meeting up here in the old house with the family, and really macabre, and had me up here, and I was sitting while they were deciding where they were going to bury me. Mm. And they were going to get a family plot. Where should they get it? And so Dad Scherer gave Bob $500 more to go to Columbus. That's what. And when I lived 5 years, Dr. Winters, he was so good to me, and I had my baby. And I carried my baby through, and that was a miracle. Because you can't carry baby or anything, because you have cancer, it has your estrogen goes sky high. But that was a miracle, and she was healthy. And he tipped me on the shoulder and said he had one other patient, one other man, he said, that lived with the same kind of cancer I had for 5 years. And he was going to put me in his book of records. And they followed me for 20 years. Just sending letters to make sure I was still alive. And after 20 years, they called me back into Columbus, this university, and declared me at that time to be a cancer survivor after 20 years.
Pretty neat.
And they took a picture of me with the Wizard of Oz, and a lion, and a Tin Man, and Dorothy, and they didn't have the doggy. But I still have that picture here to this day somewhere. They've got it back there, but they got everything over there. But it was 20 years later they declared me free of cancer. So I've always been known as a miracle. That's the reason even now people can't say everybody else died, but I lived to be 89. And they'll say she's a miracle.
Mm-hmm.
And then I got cancer of the breast. I had to have a breast removed.
I remember that.
Had 2 cancers in my breast at the time. It lived. I've fallen out how many times I lived.
Like you said, our guardian angels work overtime.
Well, I've always been close to my Lord. He takes care of me. I'm that little girl in that picture sitting on his lap. That was a picture I found out in a toilet when I was at Mohican State Forest. In a outside toilet. I was sitting there and looked down and that card was on the floor. And I have no idea even this day.
What card?
It was a holy card. I went to the outside toilet one day.
Where's the card at?
I don't have the card now. I saw that picture down at Praises, and it was the same card.
I see.
I found a little card, a little holy card. I didn't find it. I was sitting on the pot.
Mm-hmm.
God has worked in mysterious ways. He's wonders to perform. But I couldn't have been very old, and I found that little. I looked down, and there was a holy card. It wasn't even dirty on the floor, and I have no clue even to this day where it came from.
Oh, that's neat.
And I looked down, and I was all myself. I never had a friend or nothing, because we always lived out on farms or out in the country. And that was Mohican State Forest, and it was literally isolated. And I had 4 brothers that they did their own thing, or 3 that, and I played with my own dolls and sewed and did a quilt that Mary Ann did. She messed it up. She meant well, but she sewed she got a hold of that quilt, the 9-patch that I'd sewed as a child. I don't know if you remember that. And it was supposed to have squares in it. Then the 9-patch did squares. It was supposed to have made a blanket.
Mm-hmm.
But Mary just sewed them all together.
Patchwork quilt. A patchwork quilt.
Well, it would have been a patchwork quilt, but you can't sew all these together and make a quilt. You couldn't do it. But it was made out of flower. We would be getting, in those days when you got flour, you got it in these sacks that were fabric.
And they had different patterns, and people would make clothes out of them.
Right, and so Mother washed them, and I cut them up and made 9-patch, like 3 across, or 3 across, or 3 across. Not 3, how many, anyhow, made 9. But anyway, I went out the outside toilet and looked down. It was not dirty or nothing. And I picked it up, and it said, "Suffer little children to come unto me, and to forbid them not, for such is the kingdom of heaven." My family, my father and mother at that time didn't even go to church or nothing. And I fell in love with Jesus, and I thought it was like he talked to me, and I was very lonely. So he became my security blanket, just like a little kid. And I took him wherever I went. He was my imaginary friend. And he and I and my dog Sport would walk through to Mohican State Forest. Remember when we went over there to Mohican State Forest that time and swam in the Mohican River? Mary Ann and all of us went up there. I don't know if she took you kids or not. Did
I
you
don't
all
remember.
go?
I don't remember, but go on.
Well, she went up there because they were going to have a Indian thing, so the whole family went up there on vacation, and to Loudonville and to the Mohican State Forest, and they didn't know that was one of my the other. I would have had 2 children, childhood home, but that was my childhood home. But anyway, so I would go up this lane when I was a little girl with my dog, and I could walk. In those days, you were safe, right? But I'd take Jesus with me, and we'd walk over to Mohican State. That lane took me to Mohican State Forest. I mean to Mohican Park, Mohican River. Mohican River. And the other place I lived on the farm was right across the street, the road right across from Long's Retreat. And the end of that farm came there to that road, Long's Retreat. And that was the road I used to get. You know where you go into Long's Retreat and go around Latham and Boynton? That's where our school bus would take us down that road to Latham to go to school every day, and it would take us and we'd go to Boynton to church on. So those were 2 of the happiest years of my life was those 2 years. Those years when I was at Mohican State Forest, and I was very close. And I've been very close to Jesus all my life, even when I was bad. I mean, when I was having trouble with Bob and the bars and having all that. He was my best friend. He's my best friend now. That's the reason I'm so close to him. And he says, don't put Electra in your house. Just put the name of Jesus in your house. Now I'm 90 years old, 80-some. I don't have to live to be 90. I don't have to, but I'd ask him if I could.
There's a place at the nursing home.
Just to be able, the kids to tell my grandchildren that your grandmother lived to be 90.